Hi everyone. I mentioned in my video the other day with Boris Johnson as our Prime Minister that there's a real chance, a very real chance that we might get a general election in the next few months, and it certainly seems like all of the pointers are heading in that direction, with him spending all this money on advertising and barreling towards a no-deal Brexit. So there might be an election in the next few months. Now, if you listen to mainstream media, which seemingly most of the country does, you might be confused as to who you'd vote for. Even if you don't, you're probably going to be confused at the moment, because let's face it, the state of our parties in this country is not great. You know, you've got the Tory party, which, let's face it, have ripped this country apart over the last few years, just trying to remain onto power, just trying to hang on to power that little bit longer. So voting for them I can understand if you don't want to vote for them, especially if you're from the Midlands where I am and further north in England and indeed the UK. I get why you wouldn't want to vote Tory. I get why you wouldn't want to vote Labour, with all the Blairites in there as well, and the fact that even if you are supporting Jamie Corbyn, at the moment you're basically putting in a PLP that will hijack and kneecap him at every single opportunity. So even voting for Jamie Corbyn you wouldn't be getting a Jamie Corbyn government, you'd be getting a Tom Watson-like government at the moment. So I get why you wouldn't vote Labour, and let's face it, Brexit party, they're a single issue, and if we've already left the EU by the time the election comes round, and we have left at the end of October like Boris Johnson says we're going to, Brexit party probably won't stand, will they? So what you got left? Well, if you're not in Scotland, you haven't got the SNP to vote for. Basically, you've got the Plaid Cymru and SNP in Wales and Scotland, but you've got the Lib Dems or the Greens. Now, the Lib Dems, pretty cool. They've got some pretty cool people. And now Norman Lamb's pretty good. He wants to legalise pot, doesn't he? But then they've also welcomed Chuka Umunna into their ranks, and Chuka Umunna actually stopped people even talking about it in the House of Commons. He voted against people even just talking about it. He vetoed Norman Lamb's motion. And plus the fact that, it's Chuka Umunna and I can't stand him. He's going to turn more people off voting Lib Dem than he is actually turning them onto it. But they've got a new leader right now, the Lib Dems are. So it might be worth having a look and checking her out, because I didn't know much about her. And this was the first time I saw anything from her. This was her first speech in the Houses of Parliament. Take a look.
When I think of girls growing up in Eastern Bartonshire, it is inspiring for them to see women in positions of power, whether that's as First Minister of Scotland or as Prime Minister of our United Kingdom. Can I ask the Prime Minister what advice she has for women across the country on how to deal with those men who think they could do a better job but are not prepared to do the actual work?
Prime Minister.
This is not going to go well, is it? This really is not going to go well. I mean, can you say sycophant any louder? Like I say, I knew very little about her. So I looked at her record, and unlike that dress that's very pretty that she wore for her first day in the House of Commons as leader of the Lib Dems, her record is not pretty at all. Here's what I found. Oh, I just can't quite get it there. Look at this. She's her foreign policy is mixed at best. She really does fall down on the EU vote, so I'll get to that in a minute. But look at this voting on welfare and benefits. And remember, she was a junior minister in Nick Clegg's when Nick Clegg was deputy leader of the Lib Dems in the coalition with David Cameron and the Tories. Just look at this, horrific this is. Almost always voted for the bedroom tax. Almost always voted for the bedroom tax. Consistently voted against raising welfare benefits, at least in line with prices. Making the poorer even poorer. That's Jo Swinson for you. Consistently voted against paying higher benefits over longer periods for those unable to work. So she doesn't want to give, she doesn't just doesn't just want to make the poor pay. She will also the disabled as well. also the disabled. Consistently voted for making local councils responsible for helping those in financial need afford their council tax and reducing the amount spent on such support. So she's voting for making sure the councils are responsible for collecting council tax from the poor people who can't afford it, and then took away the money that they voted to take away the money to give to those associations to help these people. That's Jo Swinson for you. Almost always voted for a reduction in spending on welfare benefits. Almost always voted against spending public money to create guaranteed jobs for young people. Those 6 things are just, it's horrific. Then you look at the taxes. It's just, I mean, she generally voted for raising the threshold at which people start to pay income tax. That's a good thing, but then you start looking down. Almost always voted for increasing the rate of VAT. Increasing the rate of VAT, that's an unfair tax. Because you're taxing the poor more than you're taxing the rich. More percentage of their wages, if you see what I mean, with value-added tax. Almost always voted for higher taxes on alcoholic drinks. Who does that affect more disproportionately, do you think? Almost always voted for higher taxes on plane tickets. I'm not really bothered about that one, but you can see voted for a mixture of for and against lower taxes on fuel. So when it comes to lower taxes, it seems the only people that she's okay for lower taxes for are the fossil fuel companies. And then at the bottom there, consistently voted against increasing the tax rate. So the one time when she is against increasing the tax on people, it's on people who are paying more, who are getting more than £150,000. So she basically is making the poor pay and the disabled pay, and then giving the breaks to the rich. Haven't we had enough of this over the last 10 years since the financial crash? Don't you think the poor have paid enough? The financial crash in 2008, the bankers had made out like bandits. The bankers had made out like bandits. They had crashed the economy by creating a derivatives market and subprime mortgages where they were just making money out of thin air, and everybody knew it was going to crash. It finally crashes. They keep all the money that they made and all the bonuses that they made, and over the next 10 years, not only do the governments make the poorest people in the country, the people who can't pay for it with crippling austerity measures that cost 140,000 lives, so they say. But also those very people who crashed the economy in the first place and got away scot-free have again in the last 10 years made out like bandits. The richest 100 people, they have tripled their wealth since the financial crash of 2008. Jo Swinson, here she is, Jo Swinson. She thinks, no, the rich, no, they pay enough. And here she is on business and economy, almost always voted for reducing the rate of corporation tax. Of course, generally voted for measures to reduce tax avoidance. How do you generally? And then obviously voted for the new HS2, which is a big waste of money. This woman is just awful. And then there's her stance on fracking. She says she's against fracking, but I'm not so sure, because let me just find it. Here she is. Here's her stance. She says she's against fracking. Remember, this is from Politics Live. She gets caught here.
To the Register of Members' Financial Interests, you took 2 donations totaling £14,000 from...
Turn that up a little bit.
But according to the Register of Members' Financial Interests, you took 2 donations totaling £14,000 from Fracking boss Mark Peterson. Why?
Well, I mean, the way in which that's...
She's like, no, I didn't take it from a... Watch, she's going to say she didn't take it from a fracking country. It was an individual donation. It was an It's still from a fracking...
written up as frankly just a cheap smear, because let's get some facts.
He owns Warwick Energy, or runs Warwick Energy Limited, and is a firm with fracking licences across England.
Let's get some facts. It's a personal donation, not one from the company. And in fact...
It's a personal donation from the head of a fracking company, Joe. We're not stupid.
If you want to talk about the company, then it's actually an 80% renewables company. They provide huge amounts of offshore
But they have
wind.
fracking licences too.
Yeah, but it's a tiny part of what they do. So and I'm absolutely against fracking, because if you have fracking, you're taking more fossil fuels out of the ground.
So there you go. Jo Swinson's obviously against fracking, not against taking money from fracking from the heads of fracking companies. This is not looking good, is it? People say, oh, we want a parliamentary democracy where we've got more than, two choices. But
To go...
it's all right having more than two choices to vote for, but what if they're all awful? You've got to ask at some stage, is it designed that way? Is it really being designed this way? Here she is, again.
To go down that path.
But there was a majority 3 years ago.
This is her stance on Brexit, okay? This is her stance on Brexit. I said I was going to come back to this. Her stance on Brexit is so bad. To call it undemocratic it's not going far enough. Take a listen.
To go down that path.
But there was a majority 3 years ago.
But not for a specific form of Brexit.
But there was a
we were
majority
told
for leaving the European Union.
Yeah, I accept that there was. But then we heard Theresa May saying that what that meant was that Brexit meant Brexit. Well, 3 years on, the Brexiteers still can't even agree on what Brexit means. So we need to be able to have confidence that the public support the course of action that the government is taking. And I think the only way to gain that confidence is through having a people's vote on that Brexit deal with the option to stay in the EU.
And if they voted again to leave, would you then endorse leaving the European Union?
Well, I'm not going to change my view on what I think is right for our country.
But would you support
I would,
leaving the EU? It's a simple question.
Well, would I support it? Would I be, positive about it? I'm not going to change my fundamental beliefs.
Would you vote for it in Parliament?
No, because I was elected.
Would you vote for it now? So the country has already chosen Brexit, and so she's saying, no, we want another vote. So what she's saying there is if we vote again, and again we vote for Brexit, she still won't vote for it. That is an elected MP who just will not do what the country want her to do. I can't understand why we can't get Brexit through in this country. Can you? I can't quite understand it. It gets worse. It really does. She was confronted on this record, and I forget which the programme was now, and it was Dawn Butler who tweeted this out, and she was confronted about it. The way she bats this down, it's Thatcher-like.
I just want to have a little look at your voting record when you were part of the government under the coalition. At that time, you voted for the bedroom tax, you voted for the introduction of universal credit, you voted in favour of scrapping the educational maintenance allowance, in favour of increasing tuition fees and also capping increases in benefits below inflation.
I mean, that is just about as bad as you can get, isn't it?
Is that a voting record that you're proud of?
Well, I've already said that there's things in there that you've read out that I think that we got wrong and that we need to learn from those errors.
To answer this question, I'm going to cut her off there. She went off to say that we shouldn't have, for example, let the bedroom tax go through. Of course not. The answer to that question, the answer was, is that a record you're proud of? I promise you, is yes. I promise you, she's very, very proud of that record. So, there's an old saying, you vote Lib Dem, you get Conservative. In this instance, just be careful, because if you vote Lib Dem, you might get Jo Swinson. She is an awful, awful woman. She's an awful MP. That is somebody who is voting more right-wing than a Tory. And she's meant to be a Liberal Democrat. I mean, Liberal Democrat, and she's got a record like that. It's a joke, it really is. And here's the scary part of all this. With all that record and the fact that she's just become leader of the Lib Dems, if you look at her record, she's so horrible. She's so disgusting as an MP with her votes, and crippling the poor and the disabled, and giving tax breaks to the rich, and she's the worst of the worst. But here's the really scary part. If you look at our politics and politics around the world over the last 3 years, she's that bad. If the last 3 years is anything to go by, she'll be our Deputy Prime Minister by the end of the year. I don't know about you, but I'm fed up of this political system we have in this country, and I think it's about time it got changed. Don't you? I think we should do something about it. We need a mass movement of people in this country to get rid of people like her from the Houses of Parliament. They're the worst people in this country, and they're running it. Thanks very much for watching. Please make sure you subscribe. Please make sure you click the bell so you get a notification of when I drop further videos, and click through to the website as well so you can find out ways to support me. I really need your help to continue doing this. Thanks very much for it. Till next time, peace and take care.